we always had a radio, and I even remember my dad had a little grocery store, and during the Dempsey-Tunney fight, like 1928, everybody piled into the store because we had the only access to what was going on in the fight at that time.
When you listen to President Roosevelt's famous speech declaring war on Japan, do you have a recollection of how you felt, or did it inspire you? Were you...
Well, probably did. You know, I really don't have any real recollection of it. All I know is all my friends were going into the service in various branches, in the Marines, in the Navy, in the Air Corps. Some had gone in prior to Pearl Harbor. They had a draft going on at the time. A couple of our neighbors were already in the Army, and so I pretty much had made up my mind that what really kind of inspired me, a friend of mine and I went to the Holman Field in St. Paul one day, and we each had $1 to spend, and there was a pilot flying in a Piper Cub that was taking up $2 trips around the Twin Cities. So we got in the airplane, paid our $2, and he flew us around, and I knew right then and there that was for me.
That was for you.
That was for me. And my first experience with the Navy, they didn't have a berth for us at pre-flight school. So prior to pre-flight school, which I didn't go to until like January of 1942, I'm sorry, 43, I got the days mixed up, was they had a deal called the Civilian Pilot Service, CPT, and we were sent to Hibbing Junior College, where we flew Piper Cubs and went to ground school. And we attended classes at the junior college in Hibbing, took courses at night and flew during the daytime. And one experience I had there, which I recall very vividly, is on my second solo. I took off from Hibbing Airport to go out and practice some spins about 10 miles from town, and it started to snow, and I got lost, and I couldn't find my way back to Hibbing. So I decided the most judicious thing to do would be to try to land. Now, we didn't have skis in those days. We were operating with wheels. So I landed in this farmer's backyard when I was getting low on fuel and flipped upside down. And there I was hanging in this Piper Cub upside down. I finally was able to extricate myself and walk to the farmhouse, which was maybe a block or so away. And the farmer didn't have a telephone, and I had to notify the field. So he gave me a pair of boots and a jacket, which I wasn't wearing at the time I took off because I didn't need it. And he and I and his dog started out to his neighbor who had a telephone. And it was one of those crank telephones, you know, hello, is that you, Mert? Type telephone. And we finally got the field, and they came out the next day and righted the airplane. All I had done really was broken the prop and busted off the carburetor. And they were able to install a new propeller and a carburetor and put skis on it and fly it off the next day. And so that was my first experience of that sort of thing.
On Sunday, December 7, 1941, when you heard about the attack, what was amongst your first thoughts? You know, I have to defend my country. What is it that you thought to yourself?
Well, yeah, we all knew we were going to go into the service. I mean, it was a foregone conclusion. But I had the option of going into something that I wanted to go into. We were all raised as Boy Scouts, and our country was, the greatest, and it still is. But after that as Roosevelt described it, dastardly attack on Pearl Harbor, there was, we couldn't wait to get into the battle. Couldn't wait to get into the battle. Patriotism in those days was not like it is today, believe me. I mean, we were raised in an atmosphere, our teachers taught us patriotism. We belonged to Boy Scout troops, which taught us patriotism. To this day, I can still recite the Boy Scout oath and motto. On my honor, I'll do my best to do my duty to God and my country and to obey the Scout law, to help other people at all time, to keep myself physically strong, mentally awake, and morally straight. And that was the attitude that all of us growing up, our parents had come from the old country and we'd heard all these stories about what went on in Europe and how fortunate we were to be living in America. And you just didn't hesitate. At least I didn't. I wasn't looking to beat the draft or anything like that. I couldn't wait to be a part of that scene.
Perspective of 70 years. Now, 70 years since December 7th, 1941. Just the thoughts that go through your mind all this time later. You fought for Israel, you fought for the United States. Here you are, thankfully, still alive, still healthy, still in good shape. So what goes through your mind when you think about the 70th anniversary of Pearl Harbor?
Well, I tell you, it's like living in an era that hardly ever existed. It's almost like a dream world. I mean, those things that took place 70 years ago, and it's very difficult to put into words, really.
Now, you were telling me, Leon, you'll be going down to Alabama with something called the Legends?
No, it's called the Gathering of Eagles.
Yeah, tell us about the Gathering of Eagles and when it's going to occur and who invited you and along those lines.
This is a very prestigious thing. This is staff officers in the United States and other countries that attend a war college in Maxwell Air Force Base in Montgomery, Alabama, for a year. And once a year, they invite between 12 and 15 selectees to come there and spend a week at their expense, mingling and being part of a very prestigious gathering, panel discussions and question and answers and all sorts of things. It's on the internet if you're interested. And I have a couple of friends who are historians that are very close to me, and they've been lobbying for me for about the last 3 years to get me included. And finally, this year they agreed. It's up to the class. About 200 names are submitted, along with backgrounds and so on and so forth. And out of the 200, they select a dozen. And this year I was selected. It takes place in June of 2012. June 5th, I think June 5th to the 9th is the days. And I'm really looking forward to it.
And you'll be assigned to an officer the whole time?
I have an officer who's in charge of me, or I'm in charge of him. He's a major. His name is Todd Walker. We've been in touch now several times. He can't wait to come up here. He's coming up in February or March to interview me and make all the arrangements and get some background, so he will be able to do what you're doing now, interview me. And they also have a painting. They commission an artist who will paint a painting which will permanently hang in Spots Hall in Maxwell Air Force Base. And then they're going to make 1,000 lithographs. And each one will be signed by each one of the people that's invited. And they sell them, and that's how they raise money for the next event. So if they get $100 a piece, I guess the math figures out to $100,000 or something.
You also were involved in a nice story from Fargo, North Dakota, in the Air Museum there. Maybe you could tell us about that.
that was fantastic. I got the newspaper, which you have, I think you have too.